Hello, Taylor Ellwood here from the Magical Experiments podcast, and today I'm exploring the question, can you get results with pop culture magic? This is a question that I've gotten asked a fair amount over the years, and it's a question that I find is often rooted in skepticism on the part of the person asking, and I get it. Because back when I first started writing about pop culture magic, and I wrote an article called "Invoking Buffy." It was for in 2002 for New Witch magazine. I got a ton of flack from people. I was told that I was reinventing the wheel, and that what I was doing wasn't real magic, and that it was ridiculous. And what struck me was how close-minded those people were. Now, joke's on them because over the years, I've written 3 books on pop culture magic. I wrote Pop Culture Magic, which came out in 2004. I wrote Pop Culture Magic 2.0, which I put out in 2015, and Pop Culture Magic Systems, which came out in 2016. And these were and are books where I basically present the essential foundations of pop culture magic and explain how to work it. And to be clear, I wasn't the first person who wrote about pop culture magic. There were chaos magicians who were practicing pop culture magic and writing about it before I was even born. But I was the first person to write a book about it. And there have been a couple books that have come out since then, and I recommend checking them out if you get a chance, because it's good to see a different person's perspective. Plus, at my former publisher, Manian Press, there are a couple of anthologies, Pop Culture Grimoire and Pop Culture Grimoire 2.0, which you could also check out, which features different voices on pop culture magic. If you're really interested, you may want to check out my ultimate guide to pop culture magic here on Substack, which is available for people who are paid subscribers. Now, if you're watching this video, we're gonna dive into this in a moment. But if you're watching this video, whether it's on Substack or YouTube, I do have a favor. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube or Substack or both, go ahead and subscribe. Please heart or like this video, and please restack and share it and comment on it, because this is part of how we share this information with other people who may not know about it. And I want to tell you why this is so important. Because you might think, okay, yeah, he's asking us to share and comment on it. Great, just trying to get some engagement. But it's actually more important than you might think. Because over the years, I've also had people contact me and say, I was practicing pop culture magic, but I didn't know if I was crazy or if what I was doing was valid. And then I read your books and I realized that what I was doing was valid, that there was some validity to what I was doing, and that it really does work. And that has always made me feel really glad that I could provide them some form of validity, because I know what that's like. I mean, I remember when I got flack for writing about pop culture magic. I don't really get it anymore these days. But I mean, I had one reviewer who basically wrote that I was a fat geek writing about my pop culture interests. I had another person tell me that, like a mentor of mine, tell me that what I was doing wasn't real magic, and I had somebody that was pretty high up there in the chaos magic scene in San Francisco tell me that I was reinventing the wheel and that nothing I was doing was original. So I know what it's like to be discouraged. Unfortunately, I didn't listen to that discouragement. Instead, I went on to write 3 books that have changed people's lives. And I'm glad for that. But here's the other thing those people said, and this is really why I want you to make sure you subscribe and share and all that other stuff. Those same people also told me that they didn't tell anyone about their pop culture magic practices because they were afraid of being made fun of. They were afraid of being shamed. They were afraid of being told that what they were doing was wrong. And that still happens to this day. I still get occasional emails about it. And the thing is that pop culture magic is a viable form of magic. We're going to get into why that is and how you can get results with it today. But I think it's really important that you know that. And if you're curious about pop culture magic, I'm also going to suggest that you go into the show notes and click on the link or the button that allows you to get my How Pop Culture Magic Works guide, which actually walks you through how to create a viable form of, or a viable magical practice or technique of pop culture magic so that you can get results. Because what better way to discover if this works than to test it out for yourself? I'll mention that again at the end of the show, but just keep that in mind. So can pop culture magic actually get you results? As I said in the post below, the short answer is yes. And here's the long answer. It can definitely get you results. Pop culture magic is a viable form of magic. And what makes it viable is that you're taking your pop culture interests, whatever those are, and you're applying them to the foundational principles of how magic works. Magic has certain specific practices. And while there is a fair amount of variety out there in terms of how people do things and why they do things the way they do and all the other stuff, there's also a simple and powerful truth. If you understand the fundamentals of how magic works, you can swap out a lot of what you're reading about or exploring or practicing. You can swap a lot of it out with pop culture and still get viable results. And you can get results that are just as viable and just as powerful as if you did something that was traditional. Because the other question I've been asked is, well, are pop culture magic results less effective or less powerful or less manifest than if I do it this way? And the answer is no. It really boils down to this. If you have a fundamental understanding of how magic works, if you have a good foundation in place, you can get anything to work. The one thing I will caveat is that if you are just getting into magic and you don't have a lot of experience under your belt, I highly recommend that you take some time and actually get a year or two of experience under your belt, just learning how magic works, reading some books, working with some other people, practicing it, and then experiment with pop culture. And the reason I recommend that is because if you try to run before you've learned how to crawl, you're not going to get very far. And that would be the case where you wouldn't necessarily get results. I've had a few people who've approached me over the years where sometimes they've been like, hey, I've got this great system, and they've shared it with me. And I'm like, but you're not drawing on the fundamental principles of magic. Are you actually getting results? And they're like, well, no. Like, you need to go back to the drawing board. And it turns out that they didn't really have a lot of experience with magic. So I do think it's important to at least have a couple years of experience under your belt. I didn't start experimenting with magic in general, like right at the get-go when I was 16 and started practicing. I didn't start right away. I read some books, I did some practices, I learned what was working, and I started asking questions about why. And that's when I changed things. And that was one of the things that kind of led me to pop culture magic in the first place, because I started asking questions and I'm like, if magic works this way, why couldn't it work if I applied pop culture? And I was also thinking, like, there's all these neat, interesting themes in pop culture magic, in pop culture. There's Harry Potter, there's anime, there's other stuff, and they're doing some interesting stuff. Can I take any of this and, using the understanding of magic that I have, can I apply it as a form of magic that gets results? Now, I'll be the first to admit I have, as of yet, to create a Kamehameha Dragon Ball Z energy ball that is visible to the naked eye, and be able to toss it at somebody and cause them to, like, be pushed aside or blown up or whatever. And I'll be the first to admit that, I still can't throw a fireball or a lightning spell to this day. There are some elements of pop culture that are definitely in the realm of the fantastic. And that's okay, because that's one of the reasons why we like fantasy. So I want to be clear about that, because you're not going to necessarily get that kind of manifestation. And sometimes that's why people get into it. They want what I call Hollywood magic, and pop culture magic is not Hollywood magic. It's not special effects. But you can take the idea of pop culture and you can apply it in a meaningful and powerful way to get results. You can, for example, take pop culture characters that you identify with and work with them as spirits, and be able to connect with them and learn some type of spiritual wisdom from them, because they're channeling and mediating that. And, some we could say that's archetypal. We could say it's other things. I mean, I've found that there is a very real presence to those spirits. And I think it's kind of interesting and telling that a lot of times we get this idea, well, the spirits have to be old in order to be viable. You can have a spirit that is quote unquote new and still be viable, because the fact of the matter is we are connecting with the spirit world all the time. And there's many different ways to connect with spirits. So we look at pop culture magic, it's important to recognize that pop culture can be viable. And it's viable when we marry it to the fundamental principles of magic. What I like to do with pop culture magic is I like to define a result, and I do this with magic in general, and then I like to figure out like what pop culture I'm going to draw upon and how I'm going to utilize that. Now, one thing I want to share as a little bit of an announcement here is that later this year, or at the beginning of next year at the absolute latest, I am going to be writing another book on pop culture magic. And I'm actually going to be co-writing it with my beloved Sheena. Because there are some ideas and practices I've been working on, and there's some stuff that she's been doing. And we're going to put out a new book on pop culture magic. It's going to feature some stuff. And I'll admit, did not think I was ever going to come back to pop culture magic. I was like, I don't think I'm going to do that. Well, it turns out I am. So I'm excited about that. And I think it's important to recognize that when we look at the idea of getting results with magic, what we're fundamentally looking at is how we imprint upon reality the desired possibility that we want to manifest. Pop culture is a viable form of doing that. There's a lot of energy and attention built into pop culture. I mean, look at how many people will watch a TV show or follow the life of a celebrity or do other things. We can take that and repurpose it and use it in a helpful way to help us get results. A huge part of what the techniques of pop culture magic is about is it's about repurposing what's already available to us. So instead of having to do all the heavy lifting, we can actually work with what's already there and use it to help us manifest results. So can pop culture magic get you results? It definitely can get you results. Is it possible to work with pop culture spirits? Yes, it is. Is it possible to create practical techniques based off of pop culture? It definitely is. And yes, it still draws on sound principles of magical practice. But here's the thing. You look at a given magical practice, a lot of times what people get caught up on is they get caught up on the form and they forget the essence. The essence is what's important. If the form structures the essence, and if I can swap out one form for another and still get a result, it works. If I can do something with, like, for example, a Harry Potter wand idea, and turn that into a viable magic, then it works. The key thing is to not get caught up in the Hollywood effects. Focus on getting the result. That's what's going to help you achieve what you're looking for. So I want to thank you for watching this video. And again, please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Please share and comment on it. Share your experiences with pop culture magic. And if you're curious about pop culture magic and want to learn more, I want you to go ahead and click on the link or the button and get the How Pop Culture Magic Works book, so that way you can start learning how to practice pop culture magic and apply it to your life. You're going to be learning a viable way of getting better results as a result. So there you go. Thank you so much for watching this video and have a great day.